Okay, let's take a quick dive into understanding probability. First, what is probability? Well, let's go for a definition here. Probability is the measure of how likely an event is to happen. So you can see that kind of from the word. Will it probably happen or will it probably not happen? That's what probability is all about. The thing is you can use math to actually quantify how probable an event is. And when we say probable, we're going to measure it based on a scale of 0 to 1. So let's go ahead and put those numbers in. If a probability is way up here at 1.0, that means that that event is definitely going to happen. It's something like, what's the probability that the sun will rise tomorrow? It's pretty much 1.0. It's going to happen. Then down here is the probability of 0 is something that definitely won't happen. So what's the probability that aliens will land and take all of our math quizzes for us tomorrow morning? Probably that's a probability of 0 or near 0. Okay? Now, usually the probability is somewhere in between 0 and 1.0, not completely at 0, 1.0. So if we have a probability that's up near 1.0, we say that that's a likely event. It will probably happen. And if we have a probability down near 0, then we say that's probably an unlikely event. And then if you have a probability at the middle value, around 0.5, give or take, a little bit higher, a little lower, then you say, you know what, that's neither likely nor unlikely to happen. And that's how probability works. Now you should know that in addition to measuring this with decimals like 1.0 and 0.5, a lot of times probability is measured or expressed in the equivalent percentages. So if something is going to happen for sure, we say that it's 100% probability. If it's neither likely nor unlikely, we say it's about a 50% probability, or the probability is around 50%. And if it's not going to happen for sure, we say it's a 0% probability. And sometimes you even see it expressed in fractions, like around 1/2 is the same as 50% or 0.5. Up around 1 or 0 or fractions in between here you'll also see. All the same stuff, just telling you how probable an event is to happen. Now, how do we calculate those numbers? Well, let's get started a little bit. We'll just take a quick look at how this is done. What you want to do is you want to think of all of the different possible events, and you call that the sample space. And so each one of these dots here represents an event that can happen. And then you want to think about the events that you're asking about, which could be these two right here, for instance. And what you want to do then is a calculation. The probability of an event is the number of times the event occurs in the sample space. So in this example, it would be 2, over the total number of possible events in the sample space. So that would be all of the dots here. So you create a fraction and you calculate your decimal or percentage, or you leave it as a fraction, and that's the probability. So let's do just a quick example here. Think of a number cube, or what you might use as a die or 2 dice in a game. So we're just going to use one of them, and a number cube, you know, has 6 sides. So one of the things we can ask ourselves is, what's the probability that we'll roll a 1 when we roll a number cube just once? Well, what we can do is we can say the total number of times that event occurs in the sample space. There's only one way you can roll a 1. So that will be 1. And the total number of possible events in the sample space, well, there's 6 sides on that die, or on that number cube. So the total possible is 6. So we can set up an equation to calculate our probability here. And we write probability in this way. P, that's the probability. And then we put of what here in parentheses. So that of 1 on a number cube is 1 out of 6. And then we can calculate that as 0.17 or 17%. And that's kind of down here somewhere. So we would say that that is a somewhat unlikely event. So it's not impossible. When you roll a number cube, obviously you can get a 1. But it's probably somewhat unlikely that you would roll a 1 at any one given time. Now let's try just one more example here. What is the probability of rolling greater than 1 on a number cube? Well, what are the different possibilities? How many different possibilities are there of rolling greater than 1 if you roll that number cube once? Well, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there's 5 different possibilities, and the total number of possible events is still 6. So our fraction is going to be 5/6. And if we calculate that as a percentage, it's 83%. So we would say, that's up in this range up here. So we would say down here that that's a pretty likely event. When you roll a number cube, it's probably pretty likely that you're going to get a number greater than 1. And that's probability.